Okay, recording. We're recording now. Hi, everybody. And I guess Josh had to drop out for a minute, but let's, Chris, do you want to introduce yourself or are you good?
Sure. I'm Chris Holland. I am currently with the Atlanta Film Festival, and I'm your humble host of the webinar today.
And I'm Kristen McCracken, and I work with the Hamptons Film Festival year-round, and I work with smaller films and festivals on social media and content development. And we're so glad you're all here. So, Rosie, I'll let you take it away. And can you all see the screen? You can see the PDF that's going on? Okay, thanks.
And if you guys have questions while I'm talking, just feel free to chat it to Kristen. She'll be monitoring it, and then she can interrupt me as needed when a question comes up.
Yeah, let's use the group chat rather than the Q&A because we all can be on the group chat, so I can just see it there. It'd be great. Thanks. Okay.
Right.
So I'm going to zoom through here. There we go.
So I know that's a pretty basic question, but I figured there might be some, various levels of festival background. So I decided to start with this very basic question, which is, what is a wrap report? So basically at the end of every festival, and what I'm going to say as I go through this whole presentation is I'm going to refer to how we do things at Sundance. And by all means, it's not something you need to follow completely. It's just a way for me to explain everything I'm going to be talking about. So after the festival every year, we all are tasked with doing a wrap report, which is every staff member that works directly on the festival, whether they're year-round or seasonal, submits a wrap report to their immediate supervisor, and every staff member is required to submit one. And it's basically a documentation of what their position did the past festival and an emphasis on what their role was, what their responsibilities were, and all of their processes. And it can run the gamut from, being a smaller document if it was someone who only worked for the festival for a month, or if it's someone who's seasonal that worked there for 6 months, obviously it would be a longer document. And we can go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Why are they important and what are they used for? I feel like the reason why they're most important is to give department heads and the people that plan the festival every year documentation from every staff member of what their job was and how it worked through the festival and its relation to the festival. And it also is a good tool for planning next year's festival. And it's a good way for, Cooper, our festival director, obviously he's not going to read every person's wrap report, but he hears from all of us department heads, because we've had our staff write wrap reports, and he hears from us when we have, our big festival wrap meeting, things that he might not have thought of himself. And it's kind of a way to empower your staff to feel like they, every position is important no matter how big or small. And for them to be able to have a forum to write out everything about their job and to give input is really invaluable. And what we use them for is to kind of help, like I said, plan for the edition next year, but also to plan long-term too, and to really gauge, every year, is every department, given the support they need? Do we need to add more staff because someone's wrap report, what we hired them to do is not what the job ended up being, and their wrap report ended up, being the job of 2 people because we only hired 1. So there's a lot of specific reasons, and it's also good for people next year who come to work at Sundance, because it's never guaranteed, and I'm sure you guys know this very well, your seasonal staff especially, you're never guaranteed to get the same people back every year. While we'd love the consistency of that and not have to train new people every year, it's not a reality in our business because people aim to get full-time jobs, or, you know, their interest in film festivals might have waned and they aren't in that, you know, seasonal film festival staffing position anymore. So a lot of times we also use wrap reports to give people the following year who are hired in certain positions. It gives them a guide to what their job is supposed to be and kind of gives them a framework. So instead of just someone coming in for their first year as a seasonal staff member, say at a coordinator level in the industry office, and they know, you know, nothing about the industry office at all, but they just got hired. It's kind of a Bible, so to speak, and it's really important to have that for future staff members. And I can tell you so many stories. You know, all of us that work in festivals, we all talk. So, you know, we have this kind of rapport. And I've heard so many stories with people telling me they started a festival job and all they got was, as a rep report, one sheet of paper that had a few contacts or kind of a brief, I guess, log line of what their job was. And they were given no prior year's documentation. And they basically had to start from scratch. And I just don't think that's really efficient. So if you want to ensure the success of following editions of your festival, you really want to make sure you have wrap reports for next year's staff. And we can go to the next slide.
Can I just ask a question? So do you give them guidelines about like questions to answer? Or are you going to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, I'll talk about that in a bit. Yeah.
Okay.
In a couple slides later.
Got it.
And then what types of wrap reports are there? So at Sundance, what we do is each individual has to submit a written report, and that report gets folded in to each department. So for example, for me, I type up my own wrap report for my supervisor. And then I have my staff of one year-round associate manager and three seasonal staff members. We have an associate manager and a coordinator and an assistant coordinator in the industry office. All four of them are expected to write their own wrap reports. So what I do when it's time to submit a departmental wrap report to my supervisor is I take my own complete individual wrap report, and then I pull the pieces from my staff's wrap reports, which I think are most important for my boss to know. I don't fold everybody's wrap reports in one big document to give to her, but I do keep one big document of everybody's wrap reports filed away. But what I submit to my supervisor is key parts of my staff's wrap reports that I think she should know about and she should be aware. So sometimes, you know, obviously I won't include stuff like my staff says, oh, we need to hire, you know, we need to hire an extra person, or, you know, this little day-to-day thing she doesn't need to know about. But if it's big suggestions for changes or anything that's a big issue or problem that she and I will be discussing more later on during our planning stages, early planning stages, I want her to know that so that she's not caught off guard. Mm-hmm. So I'll submit kind of a industry office departmental one. And then at Sundance, what we do is we send out a survey to all our festival staff and department heads. It's actually all department heads, but you could send it to all your festival staff or only department heads or both. And we basically have a survey where we all have to give our input on other departments.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. We're encouraged to be positive, and because, you know, sometimes it could be a game of pointing fingers and trying to throw people under the bus and stuff like that. But the way we look at it is we try to be constructive. So if something didn't work, you could phrase it as in your survey, in a way that's constructive, where it's like, well, you guys didn't do this, you guys didn't do that. That's not helpful. It's more of, we hope to work with you next year, maybe to look at our deadlines for marketing or for film office. These didn't work for us working with you for these reasons, and we also, see it as a chance to get input. What I look forward to in those, comments from my peers is any suggestions they have. Because for two reasons. A lot of them have been around for a very long time, and they, we all know a lot of what each other does, but I feel like they've been around for so long, they have good advice or good ideas. But also for another reason is, hearing from people that this might be their first festival, or, they're relatively new to the festival world. Even though I've been at Sundance for 11 years, I've been doing things a certain way for a very long time, and it works for me. But sometimes I get tunnel vision of, not wanting to change things up too much, even if it might be for the better, because I'm used to doing it a certain way. But it's a chance for me to hear from my peers if they have a suggestion of something that I've done a certain way for 10 years, but they have a suggestion to do it a different way, and it actually saves time and, energy. It's kind of nice to hear that from every department. Mm-hmm. So basically those surveys, the information is collated from each department head or person that fills out the survey on every department. So each page of the online survey covers a different department: marketing, film office, corporate sponsorship, development, industry office, alumni. It kind of runs the gamut, lodging, travel, all that. And then all those comments are collated into a master Excel sheet that then gets distributed to everybody. So a lot of times you can kind of figure out who said what based on the kind of comments they're making. But I definitely make time to read everybody's comments on every department, so that I kind of have a good framework of what's been going on festival-wide. Because if I kind of just pay attention to what's going on in the industry and alumni programs, it kind of just puts me with, blinders, where I'm not aware, maybe there was an issue in this department this past festival that didn't really affect me this year, but it might be problematic and might affect me and my department next year. So it's always good to have that knowledge of what everybody's doing. Sorry. Okay. So there's the festival wide. And then I don't know if you guys do, big rap meetings, but we do have them ourselves as well, where we get together. What's difficult for Sundance is we have a big LA office and we have a big Park City office. So a lot of our staff don't get to spend much time in the same room with each other, except for the festival, our rap meeting, and then our festival retreat that we have in the summer. But going back to our rap meeting, we're also expected, each department, in preparation for our big rap meeting, we submit to Sarah Pierce, our managing director, a brief document of top 3 things that worked in our department, top 3 things that didn't, and top 3 suggestions for next year. So all that gets put in a large document that's distributed at our rap meeting, our big rap meeting that usually happens in Park City about like a month after the festival. And then in those 2-day rap meetings, each department gets a turn to get up in front of everybody else and kind of present what they submitted in the big document that gets disseminated.
Wow.
So it's a lot. And I'm not saying, I think if you asked me 11 years ago what our rap process was when I started, I would have said, we don't have a rap process. It was, we kind of figured things out on our own. And the last 11 years, the rap process has grown, has developed, has evolved into this ginormous thing because of the fact that we've grown so much staff-wise, department-wise in the last 11 years.
Can I ask you a question? Like during the festival, when I was at Tribeca, we had to send every morning like by before 9 or something, we had to send like a recap of the day before, any highlights or bad things that happened. And that kind of helped us. And at the end, remember what all, because it's 12-day festival, remembering all the things that happened. Do you do that kind of thing as well along the way, keeping notes or keeping track?
Yeah, I always tell my staff to take notes throughout the year, because if you don't, and then all of a sudden the festival is over and you're really, really tired,
Right.
it's going to be hard to remember every single thing,
Right.
And we don't do those daily reports. We actually, unfortunately, we have 7 a.m. Fest Ops meetings every morning where we
had them at we had a call at like 9 usually.
Yeah. But yeah, I'll talk about note taking later on too.
Okay.
So that's a good question.
Okay.
And then we can go to, actually if we go, oh wait, no, I covered all that. Okay, so we can go to the what to include on a wrap report.
Is that it? I can't see it.
One before that.
Sorry. What? That one?
There we go. Okay. So a lot of times people are at a loss as to what you should include in a wrap report and what makes a good wrap report. It'll vary between positions, and I've seen a lot of different types of wrap reports because I've had a lot of, incoming, outgoing seasonal staff over the years. I think our industry office associate manager, Kate, who's only been on the job, that this was her second festival with me in my department, and she's a great overachiever. And so her first wrap report she submitted to me last year for 2014 festival had like a table of contents. It was in a binder with dividers. I mean, but that's, one example. But then it's because, she has a bigger job than, say, our coordinators. But I had never seen a wrap report with table of contents, so that was kind of impressive. So the first and foremost to include in a wrap report is a timeline. And I feel like it's really important that everybody, no matter if they have a smaller position or a bigger position, timelines are always really good to include and key, because you go basically month by month and write out what you did at any given time. And that goes back to, hey, the person who has this position might not be back next year. So the person who succeeds them has a good framework of what they should be doing in the 6 months they're working in that position. And I'll give you an example. The one Kate submitted this year, it was, it started out as like early August to late August. And then she kind of did a whole bullet point of everything she had to do during that month. And then she would move to like late August to mid-September, and then write another section of bullet points. And then as it ramped up closer and closer to the festival, she would get more specific, because each week as we got closer, to January, each week got more hectic and had more bullet points to include. But it was a basic overview of everything she was doing, not only internally, but externally, in terms of, started setting up pass and package registration in July, reaching out to the registration department to go over the website and what it looks like, and then stuff like, emailed industry members first reminder of when industry office ticket packages and passes go on sale. So she gave a very comprehensive timeline of her processes and how her job progressed throughout the season.
We also used to call that the hit by a bus file. Like if you get, if you get hit, not to be negative, but if someone gets hit by a bus and there's no way, no one knows what their job is other than them. So it's important to keep those kind of records.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we want anyone to get hit by a bus, but
yes, knock wood.
Yeah.
And then folded into the timeline, and also it could be a separate thing, is procedures. What systems they used for each aspect of their job. So it was like, oh, okay, I used FileMaker to email industry members about, announcements that we're making, whether it's, pass and package registration, or as we got closer to the festival, when our press releases were being done, or I used PowerPlan for budgeting and this is how I used it, or what's another PowerPlan? Oh, Visio, And another thing in terms of processes and the systems you use for your processes, it's always good to include, do those systems work? Was FileMaker good to you? What problems did you have with FileMaker? What worked with FileMaker? What didn't? If you're in a ticketing position and you have to use something like Titan, which is what we use for ticketing, how was Titan? What aspects of it were buggy? What aspects of it worked? Suggestions for next year. Basically, so that everybody's supervisors and department heads can see, like, if there's 12 different departments that are having issues with one system that's used festival-wide, that's when we know, like, okay, there's something going on, say, with FileMaker or the contacts database. We need to really, 12 departments had issues with it. We need to look at what's going on in FileMaker to improve it for next year. Otherwise, it's going to happen again next year. We also include recommendations for changes to either procedures or timelines. So, someone's timeline can say, I did XYZ in early November, but then because, they went through it and they did it in early November, but they realized the timing of that task was completely wrong and they should have actually done it 2 weeks before, a month before. We always make sure to note that in a wrap report too, because if deadlines need to shift, then it's good to note that in the wrap report for next year. What worked and what didn't, and I'm not just talking about in a person's individual position, but what I also like to do is my wrap report to my supervisor, I list out all the departments I work with most closely and directly. So I list our lodging department, our volunteer department, our film office, our press office. So I go down the whole list, make a list of every department I work directly with, whether it's on the industry side or the alumni side. And then for each department, I list what worked in, working with them and what didn't, what we collectively together can improve on for next year, and maybe suggestions. And for me, it's a good way when we have our festival retreat in July. It's a good way to remind myself, oh, I need to talk to corporate about this, or I need to talk to development about this, or film office, and I need to get together and convo directly about sales agents. And it's also a good reminder. I always tell people, just because you write it in a wrap report doesn't mean it's going to fix itself. So you should be mindful and also tell your staff, if you're suggesting new things or changes or, different processes, make sure you follow, and it involves another department, make sure you follow up with that other department. You can tell them right after wrap you have a new idea to do something, but they may forget, and it's really not their responsibility if it's your idea. So it's always good to have those in the wrap report and then refer to it once you start planning for the next festival, because it'll be a great reminder of the loose ends you need to tie up if you haven't yet.
Rosie, we have a few comments I just want to tell you about. So one, Chris suggested that one way of taking notes for him is that he looks back at text messages and group messages from the week to get a sense. This is a good log of what was important during each day, which is really good to think about. And then Alan asks the question, what is the reasonable expectation of using in-depth systems and reporting mechanisms when you are completely volunteer run? He's interested in everyone's thoughts about that. And then Jody suggested that we could do another webinar about killer critical paths, outlining key elements distinctive to festivals. That's something to think about. Yeah. But we can talk about the volunteer aspect.
Yeah, because that's a difficult one, because even with us, volunteers, you know, they, like our volunteer managers, they actually do write, it's not a huge rap report, but they write it during the festival. They write a rap report that's on a small scale for the department they're working for. So like if you take our theater managers, for example, you know, they'll spend, obviously the first half of Sundance is always crazy, but there's always, you know, enough downtime during the second half that our theater managers can write a quick, you know, report or, you know, documentation of what worked, what didn't for next year. And they submit it before the festival ends.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, if you go back, volunteer work, they're volunteering their time. But if you maybe have them, and are you talking, Alan, just during the festival, or you have volunteer staff that are planning the festival with you?
You can unmute yourself.
Okay.
Oh, he said planning. But
Planning. That's hard. I mean, if your volunteer staff is willing to do that, I think what you do is you just tell them, you know, why it's important and why their input is valuable. What I found is, you know, people, whether they're a volunteer or actually paid staff, what they want most and what makes them feel really good when they're working for a festival is that we value their opinion and we value their insight. Mm-hmm. And when you make people feel that they're going to be listened to and they're being taken seriously because we want to hear their take on the job, I find that it's a less bitter pill to swallow of the expectation of asking them to do that because they're volunteer staff.
Yeah.
Because everybody has an opinion and they love to share their opinion, you know.
Right. And, you know, if you make them feel good, they'll want to help you out.
Yeah, they'll feel like they're part
better
of
for next year.
Yeah.
Give them like ownership of something. So yeah.
Yeah.
Are you ready for the next slide, or are you?
Not yet. Okay. If someone's position has to do with revenue, make sure they include that in their rap report. Mine obviously does. We sell passes and packages to the independent film community. And so what I do is I always have a breakdown of this is how many of each pass we sold, what the price point is of each pass, and then I break down all the numbers and kind of lay it out per pass. You know, we sold 150 ticket package A's, and this is how much revenue it generated. We sold this many express A's, this is how much revenue it generated. And then a master, like, after all the pass and package sales have been, you know, accounted for, I also give a master number of total, you know, revenue from the industry office for everything. And we're talking pass and package sales, late fees, name changes, FedEx fees, all that. Budget notes, that's a good one, is if you have ideas that you know will affect budget next year, you got to put it in the rap report. Otherwise, if you don't and you say, oh, we need to hire, you know, 2 more positions, but I'll just talk to my boss, you know, 2-3 months from now, you might forget about it. And then when budgeting comes around, you also forget about it. Or, you know, when budgeting comes around and it's the first time you mention it, it's not good to just mention it right when you're doing budgeting. Otherwise, no one has the anticipation of, well, the industry office is going to need, you know, $1,000 more because they have more industry members that they have to buy bags for or catalogs. So if it has budget implications, you should definitely put it in. Also, an update of the job description. We all know, probably from experience, when you get hired at a festival and you do a job, it never ends up being the job you're actually doing. So a lot of times I tell my staff, you know, give me input on what you thought the job would be and what it actually was, and suggestions for next year. You know, if we're giving you a lot of work that wasn't spelled out in the original job description when you got hired, and we might need to reevaluate that job and make it a higher level and higher pay. We might have thought, oh, this coordinator job, oh, it didn't have that much to do. But then as the festival planning progressed, and we're getting in the weeds and we put more work on them, and then by the end of the festival, we realized, well, that really should have been an assistant manager. So it's also always good to put stuff like that in.
I have one other question that came in. So are Sundance rep reports done online or on paper?
They're done. Our big one where we do a survey of every department and give our input, that's done online. But then everyone's individual and departmental rep reports are all submitted, are done on paper, on Word or whatever.
Archive them somewhere, like in a Google Doc or a server or some kind?
They're mostly kept within each department. Oh, that's another thing, is just make sure your staff saves them in a place that you can find them next year. A lot of times seasonal staff, they're saving it to their desktop and not in, shared folders. And then that person leaves and their account is deactivated. And then the following year, it's like, where did their rap report go? I'm always paranoid. I always keep printed out copies and then electronic copies.
Another question is, do their managers do rap reports each shift or only after the whole event? I don't know if you already said that. You said.
We do it after the event.
Okay.
Although I will say this, if you know someone that's on staff, their last day working for the festival is the last day of the festival, you should give them plenty of notice beforehand to keep that in mind, because obviously, once their contract is done, they're not going to want to spend an extra 3 days where they're not getting paid writing the rap report. So always tell them, start doing your rap report, maybe a month in advance, with what they can, with the information they can include, and then try and finish it, by the time their last day of the contract is.
Or build in a couple extra days of their contract if you really want a solid rap report.
Yep.
It's not always possible, but.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions before we go to the next slide?
Are rap reports anonymous? No, right? That your other thing is anonymous, right? Your online, your survey.
Yeah, our survey, but the regular submitted one's not anonymous.
Josh, they did an online survey at the end where everyone could comment on other people's departments, and that was anonymous. I don't know I think you were out for that, but anyway.
Yeah.
But you can usually figure out by the comments, who's saying it, because it's very, the comments are very
constructive, right? They're not bitchy. They're not bitchy or
Cool.
All right. We can go to the next slide. What to avoid. Complaining. It's not constructive. We all know, especially in the nonprofit festival world, we work long hours, we work with limited resources, but we do the best we can. So complaining about, I didn't have enough of this, I didn't have enough of that. We all make do during the planning and the festival itself, but just being really bitchy and about it is not constructive at all. And probably, if I saw a rap report from one of my staff where they were bitchy and complaining, what the first thing it would make me think is, I don't want to hire this person again next year. If it's too short, I saw a rap report a few years ago from someone who was not in my department, but worked closely with my department. And it was her first year working at a festival. And her job was pretty integral to my department, even though she was in a different department. But her rap report was about 1.25 pages. Mm-hmm. And most of it was her opinion about working in the Park City office and what was fun about it. So it was obvious that she hadn't been trained, and we'll go over this later too, properly about what a rap report was. And it wasn't explained to her what a rap report was, you know. I've had, you know, in the past, had to tell, you know, seasonal staff who've turned into me, you know, a 2-page rap report. I've told them, you know, you got to add more stuff in, you know. And a lot of times it's people are tired, you know, and it's like, oh, to write a rap report, oh my God, I don't want to. But, you know, you just got to put in the time to do it.
That's why if you can have an ongoing document going on your whole year and kind of keep track and put on the first of every month, just on your to-do list, like, you know, write up what happened last month and think about that. I mean, that's so much easier than going back month to month at the end.
And going back to what Chris had said earlier, you know, he checks texts and emails, you know, periodically to remind himself of things for rap. I literally label a folder each year in my email that's just called rap. And any email that comes in where it's an issue or we're problem solving something or it's something I want to remind myself of later, I take that email and I drop it in that rap folder. And then like Kristen, I'll check it periodically to remind myself. I'll refer to it a lot when I'm writing my rap report. So good, you know, note-taking is key. And then unprofessionalism. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth when people are, you know, calling out people by name, either within the department or from other departments, like they didn't do this, or, you know, they were, you know, they showed up late to this meeting during the festival because they were hungover, you know. Yes, that stuff happens and it's unfortunate, but it's not it's not to include in a rap report. If you're having, you know, HR problems with people, you know, throughout the planning and during the festival, it's not something you need to include in a rap report, and it's something you address, you know, in a more professional manner. And people don't realize, you know, these rap reports, they're around forever, you know. So something that's on paper like that, if you know, are bad-mouthing something, it's not something you want to keep on file, especially if you get hacked. And then other things to consider, and we can go to that slide. And before we go into this slide, does anyone have any questions? Nope, we're good.
I don't see any on the thing.
Okay. So other things to consider, like I just said, you know, some of your seasonal staff or some of your new staff, this may be the first film festival they've ever worked at, or this may be the first job they've had out of college, you know. So it's good to be a leader in really sitting down with the staff before things, you know, start getting really busy, and educating them about rap reports and what you want from them in their rap reports, and, you know, your expectations of it. And, you know, if they know why the rap reports are important and they're made to feel like, you know, like we were talking about earlier, their insight is invaluable, which it is, then they're going to, you know, spend more time and energy writing it. And also, because I've seen people, you know, just blindly tell their staff, I need a rap report from you, and they leave it at that, which is not helpful at all. People need guidance. People need direction. We talked about take notes as you go through the season. Oh, what we like to do in the industry office is we share everybody's individual rap reports with each other. And this is, you know, at the end when everybody turns in their rap reports, but also when we start a new season and we get, you know, new seasonal staff within the industry office, we let everybody read all the rap reports that were written from the staff in the industry office, because it gives everybody on the industry team a good framework of what everybody else is doing. So even if it's a coordinator or an assistant coordinator, they get to read the associate manager's rap report and the manager's rap report and the first coordinator's rap report, because it will give them a good idea of what everybody else is doing throughout the year and throughout the planning stages, so that they're not thinking, oh, I don't know, I report to the manager of the industry office and the coordinator, but I don't really know what they're doing while they're having me do these other tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good way for people to see what the rest of the team is doing.
I mean, do you think that you address that throughout the year, though? You have meetings and you have other things. I mean, is that really like a end of the year thing, or is that like an all along the way thing?
Well, since like with the industry office, I only have 1 year-round person and 4 seasonal. And those seasonal people are done usually by mid-February.
I see.
So, yeah. And then they don't start up until the fall, late summer or fall, depending on the position. And a lot of times, they're just, we hire them. And then if they're new, we'll go through a training process, but it's only like the person's direct supervisor is training them. But then we have other team members that aren't supervising them but work closely. So we like them to see what everybody else is doing.
I see. So it's like a wider picture for them.
Yeah. If a job didn't exist before until a current festival edition, the rap report should probably be more comprehensive, because if it was a new position that you created for this year's festival and you've never had that position before, you really want a more comprehensive report so that you can evaluate, was this job needed? Did we make a mistake in creating it? Could it have been, could we have taken that job and actually assigned the roles and responsibilities to 2 people that were already working here? Or, oh, great, I'm really glad we created this job, because obviously reading their rap report, it's completely clear to me that we did need this person here based on, what their assessment of their job was.
And if you can justify it with deliverables, that's even better.
Yes. Yeah. And then what's the last note I have here? We talked about give people enough time to write their rap reports,
Mm-hmm.
And that's it with my notes. Anyone have any questions? Any insight that you've gleaned from writing your own rap reports and doing rap meetings?
One thing that you didn't talk about is it helpful? Like I think that at the Hamptons in particular, their rap reports are very helpful to kind of show all the progress to the board. Like there's another aspect to it, that it's a helpful way to show the progress and the growth from the year before.
Yeah. Like I think what Cooper does is he kind of takes, big notes. I think he probably takes big notes from when we get together in Park City and everybody does a little presentation on top 3 things that worked, things that didn't, and suggestions. He probably takes bits of those to fold into, the next time they have a board meeting and they can show, big aspects of, the growth.
Are there any other questions, you guys? You can just unmute yourself and talk. We can all talk here. You don't need to write it. Hello?
Hi. Wasn't sure if I was muted or not.
There you are. Yep.
You talked about, prior to, about submitting your top 3 things that worked and didn't work. Was there one other thing that you included in that?
Oh, suggestions for next year.
Okay.
Do you crunch numbers in these too? Like that's what I felt. I always felt like showing what happened from last year to this year, kind of if that's relevant to your position. I mean, I guess it's not relevant to every position, but.
For my individual rap report, I do. Like I have a side-by-side comparison from like 2014 versus 2015 in terms of task package sales, number of industry members that came, total number of international industry members, so that I can show growth or not. Like if one year we had 500 international industry members come, and then the following year we only had 300, then it'll make me take a step back, like, wait a minute, why did we only have, why was there almost a 50% drop in international industry members attending? I need to dig deeper into this.
And sometimes you can point to why that happened, and sometimes you need to look at it and figure it out. Yeah.
I would actually recommend doing that for a very long period of time, because I know when I would keep all of the media stats for Silver Docs over like the 10 years. And so when it came to like an anniversary year or whatever, it wasn't just year to year for our own analysis. It was able to report growth back out for the entire life of the festival. And so having those cumulative numbers from everyone is really good, I think, to have them in some place. Because
I do that. I mean, with the Hamptons, I have a running tally of stats over since I started, and kind of just showing the growth from year to year, and looking at like, well, this year we went up 30%, and this year we went up 40%, and that's even better. And just to keep track, I think that helps, and it helps justify your positions. I mean, that's the other thing is by showing that things work and that they're worth investing in.
Yeah, and our big wrap meeting, some departments, for obvious reasons, can't be beholden to stick to just 3 things that worked, 3 things that didn't, suggestions for next year. Like our operations manager, for example, she's the one overseeing, every venue, and every venue manager reports to her. So, when she does her presentation, it doesn't follow that things that work, things that didn't, suggestions for next year. Her presentation is more of like, she goes through each venue and then gives attendance numbers for each, non-theater venue, and then any issues that came up at those venues, or the things that worked, or the wheelchair elevator broke down 3 times. We really need to talk to the city about it next year, stuff like that. So, I wouldn't make it, a blanket, every department should follow that model, because some of them are going to have to turn in different types of things. So, like our ticketing people too, they're going to be sharing numbers with the group, and corporate will be sharing, sponsorship numbers with the group.
Yeah. I just want to say that we are going to have some takeaways, that we talked to Rosie about this before, that she's going to share some sort of wrap report, and maybe that table of contents that she mentioned. And I know that from the last time, any of you who were here the last time and sponsorship webinar, I'm still working on trying to get a wrap report, a sample wrap report for sponsorship, which is going to look something different, because you're trying to it's different than what you're talking about, Rosie, because it's not more external than internal. So we should have all of those things soon. Just wanted to point that out. And we're also, I think God's Grace had asked about the budget sample takeaway from a webinar a while ago, and we're still working on all those things. So bear with us. We're getting all this together. Again, with the same thing, it's kind of similar to a wrap report, right? Like everyone prepares for the actual event, but then it's hard to follow up with the final things to take away. So we'll get those done. So Amy Williams just wrote that we had an outside facilitator guide us through a 2-day offsite wrap session. She was extremely helpful getting discussion around the issues staff felt went very wrong. Her external perspective that they were good enough was an important message to hear. Oh, her external perspective that the things were good enough was an important message to hear. I see. Interesting. Because we're too hard on ourselves sometimes, I think, maybe. I don't know.
You need a neutral party.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one thing I didn't mention that I feel like I should too is after the festival, usually I'll also reach out to certain departments on my own and just have like a half hour, 20-minute wrap powwow with them. And it's a lot of times it's the departments I work with the closest with. So our film office, our theater operations department, so that I can go over directly with them one-on-one, things that work, things that didn't, what we can work together on next year, what I usually do is I take a trip to Park City after the festival for like 1 or 2 days, separately to our big rap meeting. I do it before our big rap meeting, and I kind of just, chock a block full of meetings with my colleagues one-on-one. Because I want to hear from them their assessment of how our industry office went, how our alumni went, their assessment of, my staff and whatnot.
Josh, can you chime in with the thing you just wrote to me and just say it out loud for everyone to hear?
Yeah, we tend to meet like our major staff and do it in really small situations where it's not a lot of people. And we just kind of talk and find out what they enjoyed about the event and what they didn't like about the event, and kind of consolidate it. And then when we hear stuff from some people, we kind of take that over and say, hey, we heard this, and we try to get people's opinion on kind of what we learned. But this year, we have someone that's from a computer software background. And I guess what they do in the tech field is they have like a rap report that they ask their staff and volunteers to do weekly. So we're kind of trying to try out that and see if that works. And it's anonymous, but it's kind of like, what are the things that you did this week that you felt were successful? What did you do that you don't really think you had to do? And it kind of hopefully will give us a better feedback so that we have more retention, I think. So
Alan just wrote, we have a war meeting. I don't know if you mean rap meeting, but it says war meeting, but okay.
It could be war sometime.
It could be a war meeting too. A couple weeks after the festival, and we try to keep it to wins, opportunities, and suggestions. And we said an important lesson was that we need to actually do something with the suggestions, or people feel like their voice isn't heard, even if it's to say why we can't or won't use the suggestion. He says rap meeting, yeah, not war. Okay. Make rap, not war. Good.
Yeah, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, with expectations of volunteers, writing rap reports. It's always good to just reiterate to them, we value your opinion. All of us in the festivals we work for, we can't improve unless, we know about things that aren't going right, especially from our staff and our volunteers.
And I think that, Alan also suggested to me earlier, and we're moving forward. These were the we need to plan our next few webinars. And I do think that having one, Alan suggested this, and maybe we could have a few festivals who do use volunteers to work together to kind of plan a webinar, but to talk about how to best use volunteers and how to motivate them. And because there are a lot of festivals for whom a huge staff is not relevant. It's more about figuring out how to manage volunteers and use your people and make sure that they feel heard, valued.
Make them forget they're not getting any money.
Right.
I'm curious, how many volunteers did Sundance have last year? Some like 2,000 or 3,000?
Yeah, and some of them are, sign up, meaning not full-time, but the majority are full-time.
Which is like 40 hours a week or?
Yeah, at least, yeah.
But more. Wow.
I think that Tribeca just put out their stats. They had 700 something volunteers. They don't call them volunteers. They call them Tribeca crew because they're for profit. And a few years ago, we got in trouble when I worked there. They got in trouble because
they didn't pay people.
You can't have volunteers for a for-profit company.
Yeah, you can't call them that.
You have to give them something. And so they had this education program, and it was like they would have there would be weekly opportunities for them to meet with high up staff to kind of talk about what they do and make it educational and have it more of an internship. But yeah, it's complicated. I mean, they still, I think, work for no pay, but I think that they had to have some other component to it. I can't remember exactly what happened. But, so yeah, I mean, that's only a third of what you're saying that you had. So at Sundance, it's a lot of people.
Yeah,
that's huge.
A lot of them, thank God, they come back every year. Some of my closest friendships at Sundance are with some volunteers that I've known since my first festival in 2005.
There are people at the Hamptons who've been there. There's a volunteer who's been there the whole time. I think this is the 23rd, 24th year or something. She's done it every time. It's amazing.
And I like to talk to those volunteers that have been around for a long time, especially like our theater managers. A lot of them have been around for, over 10 years. And I like getting their notes sometimes. I'll check in with them during the festival and, especially if it's theater managers, and I check in with them and say, how are things going? What's been good, what's been bad? Because their insight is really key too.
Yep. All right. If no one else has any questions, I think we can wrap this up. And we'll, again, as we said, we'll put this up in a day or two. And Rosie's going to share some documents to share that we can take moving forward. And we'd really love to hear from you guys. If you can go on the Facebook page or on the film festival organizers and suggest topics for webinars, because we've got to do some planning for the summer. So we'd love to hear from you guys. And if anyone of you want to do a webinar, it doesn't have to always be the executive committee. We want to hear from people who are perhaps at smaller festivals or different kinds of festivals, because I think that there's a lot of sharing that needs to go on. That's not just from big festivals down. We need to think about although we can all learn from each other, I think that we want to expand this. So please let us know what you have in mind. And maybe we have a few suggestions already, Jody. I've been keeping a list, so maybe we can put it out there and kind of ask you guys to discuss it and tell us what you'd like to have.
Also, if you have samples of great rap reports that you think other people can learn with, I would love for us to collect a few different ones, because it's always worth
looking
at different ways people have done.
Yeah, if you guys have them, can they send it to info@film? What is it? info@IFP. Here, I'm going to type it. It's info at the website, right?
Yeah.
Please send us your rap reports, and we'll make a whole. That'd be nice to have a whole blog post with.
It's info at IFP festival.
Oh, whoops!
Forum.
Sorry. Sorry. IFP festivalforum.org. Sorry. There we go. Scratch that other one. It's been a long day for some reason. All right. So thank you, Rosie.
Thank you, guys. I hope it was enlightening and you took something away from this.
And again, we're sorry for the mishap in the beginning. We'll have to look into what happened, because we've never had this problem before. But all the panelists were sitting here and no one was coming, and we thought something must be wrong. Rosie's too big a draw to not have.
I'm cursed.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Bye.
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 Bye.